What if everything a man believed about strength was about to be tested in a single night, not on a battlefield, not in a courtroom, not in front of an army, but in complete silence? The kind of silence that reveals who you really are. When nobody is watching, there 11 lived a king, whose name was respected across distant lands. People spoke of his victories. They admired his wealth, they feared his authority. Yet the king himself knew something that nobody else understood. The greatest victories of his life had never happened in public. They had happened in private, inside his own mind. For years he had trained himself to remain calm when others became angry. He had trained himself to remain focused when others became distracted. Because he understood a simple truth: a man who cannot control himself will eventually be controlled by something else. One evening, after a long day of ruling his kingdom, he sat alone inside a magnificent chamber. Illuminated by golden lamps, the room was peaceful. Outside, the wind moved softly through the palace gardens. The king expected nothing unusual, yet destiny had prepared a different lesson. A servant entered and bowed respectfully. "My king, there are visitors requesting an audience." The king nodded, "Allow them to enter." Moments later, 4 women entered the room. Each carried herself with confidence. Each possessed remarkable beauty. Each understood the influence that charm could have upon people. The king greeted them politely. At first, the conversation seemed ordinary. They spoke about travel, they spoke about life, they spoke about ambition. Yet beneath every word existed another purpose. The women wanted to understand something. Was the king truly different? Or was his reputation merely an illusion? After all, many people appear strong until temptation arrives. Many people appear disciplined until desire appears. Many people speak about principles until those principles become difficult to follow. The king sensed their curiosity. He noticed the questions. He noticed the subtle tests hidden within the conversation. Yet he remained calm. Hours passed. The discussion became deeper. One woman finally asked a question that changed everything. "My king, what is the difference between an ordinary man and an extraordinary man?" The king smiled. "The ordinary man follows his emotions wherever they lead. The extraordinary man decides where he wishes to go before emotions arrive." The answer surprised them. One woman laughed softly. "So you believe emotions are dangerous?" The king shook his head. "No, emotions are natural. The danger comes when they become your master." The room became silent, because deep down everyone understood exactly what he meant. How many lives had been ruined by anger? How many dreams had been destroyed by fear? How many relationships had ended because people surrendered to temporary emotions? The king continued. "Most people believe freedom means doing whatever they feel like doing, but true freedom is much greater than that." "What is true freedom?" another woman asked. The king looked toward the window. "True freedom is the ability to say no to yourself." The answer confused them. The king explained further. "If a man cannot resist his impulses, then he is not free. He is simply obeying another master." Those words lingered in the room. Many people spend their lives believing they are making choices, yet often they are simply reacting. Reacting to fear, reacting to desire, reacting to approval, reacting to pressure. The king understood that wisdom begins when reaction ends. As the evening continued, the women became increasingly fascinated. This was not the response they expected. Most powerful men enjoyed displaying their power. Most wealthy men enjoyed displaying their wealth. Most successful men enjoyed displaying their accomplishments. Yet this king seemed interested in something entirely different: mastery, not mastery over others, mastery over himself. And perhaps that was why people respected him, because genuine strength always feels different. It does not need to announce itself. It does not need attention. It does not need validation. It simply exists. One of the women asked another question. "What was the hardest battle you ever fought?" The king immediately answered, "Myself." The women exchanged surprised glances. The king continued. "No enemy has ever challenged me more than my own mind." Every day, he explained, people face invisible battles. The battle against laziness, the battle against envy, the battle against distraction, the battle against impatience, the battle against self-doubt. These enemies are invisible, which makes them incredibly dangerous, because people often spend years fighting external problems while ignoring internal ones. The king had learned long ago that lasting peace does not come from controlling the world. It comes from understanding yourself. As midnight approached, the conversation grew even deeper. The women began sharing their own experiences, their fears, their regrets, their ambitions. For the first time, the evening stopped being a test. It became a lesson. The king listened carefully. He rarely interrupted. He understood something important. Most people do not need advice. They need understanding. The ability to listen is often more powerful than the ability to speak. One woman admitted that she constantly worried about what other people thought of her. The king nodded, then he asked a question. If 10 people praise you and one person criticizes you, which voice stays in your mind? The woman smiled. The criticism, exactly, said the king. That is because the mind often focuses on danger more than gratitude. He explained that peace becomes possible when we stop allowing strangers to control our self-worth, because if your confidence depends entirely on the opinions of others, your happiness will always remain fragile. The women listened carefully. Every answer seemed simple yet powerful. Every lesson seemed obvious, yet profound. That is often the nature of wisdom. It does not impress because it is complicated. It impresses because it is true. As the night continued, the king shared another lesson. He explained that life becomes easier when you stop demanding perfection. Many people refuse to enjoy today because they are waiting for a perfect tomorrow. They postpone happiness, they postpone gratitude, they postpone peace, until one day they realize they postponed their entire life. The women sat quietly. The room felt different now. The atmosphere had changed. What began as curiosity had transformed into respect, because they were no longer looking at a king. They were looking at a man who had spent years learning how to govern himself and self. Government is far more difficult than governing a kingdom. The king looked around the room and smiled. Then he said something none of them would ever forget. The strongest person in any room is not the loudest person. It is the person who remains calm when everyone else loses control. And at that moment, everyone understood exactly what he meant. The night was not about power. The night was not about status. The night was not about appearance. The night was about something much deeper. Character, because when everything else disappears, character remains, and that is where true strength begins. The lamps continued to burn softly as the night moved deeper into silence. Outside the palace walls, the world slept. But inside that room, something far more important than sleep was taking place. Understanding. The king sat quietly for a moment, not because he had nothing to say, but because he understood the value of silence. Most people are uncomfortable with silence. They rush to fill every empty moment with words. Yet wisdom often arrives during moments when nothing is being said. One of the women finally broke the silence. My king, if self-control is so important, why do most people struggle to develop it? The king smiled. Because self-control requires something most people avoid. And what is that? She asked, discomfort. The room became quiet again. The king continued, every meaningful achievement in life requires temporary discomfort. Discipline requires discomfort. Growth requires discomfort. Learning requires discomfort. Patience requires discomfort. Yet modern people spend enormous amounts of energy trying to avoid discomfort. They seek comfort in every situation, and because of that, they never discover how strong they truly are. The women listened carefully. The king stood and slowly walked toward the window. The moonlight illuminated part of his face. When I was young, he said, I believed strength came from defeating others. The women watched attentively, but age taught me something different. True. Strength comes from defeating the weaknesses within yourself. He paused. The man who conquers cities may still be a slave to anger. The man who accumulates wealth may still be controlled by fear. The man who receives admiration may still be desperate for approval. The women exchanged thoughtful glances because they knew he was right. Many successful people appear powerful on the outside, yet privately they are exhausted, anxious, insecure, restless. The king continued, the world teaches people how to gain power. Very few people learn how to gain peace. Those words remained in the room. Power without peace creates suffering. Success without peace creates emptiness. Achievement without peace creates exhaustion. The women understood this better than most. Each had pursued different goals throughout life. Each had chased dreams, each had experienced victories, yet none of those victories permanently satisfied them. Because external success can never permanently solve internal conflict, the king returned to his seat. One woman asked another question. What is the greatest mistake people make? The king answered immediately, they spend too much time trying to control things they cannot control. He explained that people constantly worry about the future. They worry about other people's opinions. They worry about outcomes. They worry about events that may never happen. And in doing so, they sacrifice the present moment. The future is important, he said, but living inside the future is dangerous. Most people live in one of two places, the past or the future. Very few live in the present. The past creates regret. The future creates anxiety. The present creates peace. The women nodded slowly, because everyone understood the truth behind those words. How many nights had been lost replaying old memories? How many mornings had been ruined by worrying about tomorrow? How much life had been missed because attention was somewhere else? The king continued, peace begins when you return your attention to this moment. The room felt different now, almost as if every word carried more weight than before. One woman leaned forward, and how does a person do that? The king smiled by remembering what is real. Most suffering exists in imagination. The mind creates stories, stories about failure, stories about rejection, stories about disaster, stories about embarrassment, and then people suffer because of stories that have not even happened. The king explained that the human mind is both a powerful servant and a dangerous master. When guided properly, it creates wisdom. When left uncontrolled, it creates chaos. For a long moment, nobody spoke. The crackling sound of a nearby fire filled the silence. Then the king shared a lesson from his youth. There was a time when criticism controlled me. The women looked surprised. One asked. The king laughed softly. Yes, even kings are human. He explained that many years ago, he constantly worried about what others thought of him. He wanted approval. He wanted admiration. He wanted respect. But eventually he discovered something important. No matter what you do, someone will criticize you. No matter how hard you try, someone will misunderstand you. No matter how successful you become, someone will dislike you. The moment he accepted this reality, he felt free, because he stopped living for the opinions of strangers and started living according to his principles. The women listened carefully. One of them lowered her eyes. Perhaps she was thinking about her own life. Perhaps she was remembering moments when criticism had influenced her choices. The king noticed then. He said something simple: never allow people who do not know your journey to define your worth. The word struck deeply because many people spend years seeking validation from individuals whose opinions should never have mattered. As the night continued, the conversation shifted toward happiness. One woman asked what makes a person truly happy. The king remained silent for a few seconds. Then he answered, gratitude. The women seemed surprised. They expected a more complicated answer. The king smiled. People constantly focus on what they lack. They rarely appreciate what they already possess: a healthy body, a peaceful morning, a loyal friend, a meaningful conversation, a chance to learn, a chance to grow. These things are often ignored because they appear ordinary. Yet ordinary blessings are the foundation of extraordinary lives. The king explained that gratitude changes perception. It teaches the mind to recognize abundance rather than scarcity. And perception influences everything. Two people can experience the same situation. One becomes miserable, the other remains grateful. The difference is not the event. The difference is the interpretation. The women sat quietly. The atmosphere had become reflective. No longer a test, no longer a challenge. Now it felt like a gathering of people searching for wisdom. The king looked around the room one final time. Then he spoke slowly. One day all of us will leave this world. The statement surprised them, but he continued. When that day comes, nobody will care how many luxuries we owned. Nobody will care how famous we became. Nobody will care how many people admired us. What will matter is how we live, how we treated others, how we handled difficulties, how we used the time we were given. The room became completely silent, because deep down everyone knew he was speaking the truth. Life is temporary, time is limited, and because it is limited, it becomes precious. The king stood 11 more. The night was coming to an end. The women prepared to leave. Yet before they did, one final question remained. What is the greatest lesson life has taught you? The king smiled a calm smile, a peaceful smile, the smile of a man who had spent years understanding himself. Then he answered, the greatest lesson is this. Happiness does not come from controlling the world. It comes from mastering yourself. The women remained silent, not because they disagreed, but because there was nothing left to add. The answer contained everything, and as they walked away, into the fading darkness of the night, they carried something far more valuable than they had expected.